currently at the University of Campinas, and Minguo Li-Margraf. Where is she?
She's just coming back.
Okay, yeah. So she will be our person who reminds us academics who sometimes are our heads on the ivory towers about the real world and how we actually apply some of the principles that we're doing through the concept of rainforestation in China. So let me see. Okay, we're going to start with Shuli, and let me just say a few words of introduction. So I'm very happy to introduce Shuli Chen, who came to the University of Arizona in 2017 from Beijing Normal University, where she received a master's in remote sensing after getting a bachelor's in geography from Sun Yat-sen University. She came to Tucson because she wanted to use her remote sensing skills to apply them to ecology. And we're very happy with that merger. Along the way, she was named a Galileo Scholar at the University of Arizona, and NASA awarded her a prestigious fellowship, which has got this mouthful of a title, Future Investigators in NASA, Earth and Space Science and Technology. But the acronym is FINEST, which I like because that means I can get to introduce her as one of NASA's finest fellows. And so she is. So let's put your presentation on the screen. There you go. 10 minutes, as Antonio likes to say.
Thanks so much, Scott, for the very nice introduction. Today, I'm very happy to be able to follow in the footsteps of yesterday's session about the complexity of nature. And today, I'm going to go beyond a little bit about the complexity of the nature and trying to look at how such complexity affects the forest drought response, and can we do a better conservation strategies in the future. How important are the forests for the climate change? We will learn a lot from yesterday. There are very significant mutual interactions between the forest and the climate. For example, the forest has impact on the atmosphere through water vapor, heat fluxes, or circulations. And in return, the atmosphere would also have strong impact on the forest through the rainfall, seasonality, extreme weather events, or the forest demography. So critically needed for us is to understand the ecological, atmospheric, and hydrological dynamics. So I would like to ask you, what's your first impression about the Amazon forest? You might think about its biodiversity or very complex canopy structures with multi-layers act as a very important carbon sink in the global change cycling. Or you may think of its very widespread river system, like we talked about yesterday, the important transpiration among the Amazon forest. But right now, researchers are really concerned about the threats of the Amazon forest that are facing. For example, the extreme weather events, increased temperature, or human-induced degradation or deforestation. So the question is, if the Amazon forest will passing a tipping point towards collapse under the climate change, or will the forest can keep resilient under the climate change? But I have to say, the largest uncertainty is in tropical area, and especially for quantify the Amazon forest productivity as well as its resilience. So for me today, I would like to explore its resilience and in a quantitative way. And my main methodology here is using the biological scaling, using the key example of the biogeography. So what is biogeography? This concept was proposed by the Alexander Humboldt, the father of the biogeography. Here is the picture. That he depicts about the nature of painting. This visualizes the different vegetation zones on the cross-section of the mountain and relating them to different altitude, humidity, and temperature at different scales. And the classical biogeography is more about the distribution of species in space and time. But here, for this talk, is only about the ecosystem function, particularly the photosynthesis. Here is an example for me to illustrate what is the biogeography and how it can be applied specifically for the biological scaling. You might see this picture as seemingly a random collection of points and colors. And if we take one step back, and some kind of patterns emerges, but still we don't know what it is. And if we take one more step back, and you might the patterns emerges. It looks like what human pictures, possibly adults or children, but it is not until we see the whole picture as all the content emerges. It's actually the painting called Sunday on Land-Grant-Jarrett, a very famous painting by the neo-impressionist painting called Georges Seurat. So similarly, so this is the very simple question in the impressionism painting. But similarly, this is also the central question in our global change biology. Similarly, what we can do is we can also observe the forest dynamics at the local scale, landscape scale, and the regional scale. So the question is, the information that we receive from the pictures at each step are so different. So will the tropical forest behave similarly across different scales, or it's the similar that we observe from the pictures that they behave very differently across different scales? And what if they behave very differently? What we can do a better conservation strategies to better protect our forest ecosystem. So here I'm using an example to explore the Amazon drought forest response to illustrate the exploration at the local scale and the regional scale. So here is the top row is the drought characterization for the 3 once in 100 droughts happening in Amazon forest across 2005, 10, and 15, and the more brownie shows more intense drought. So correspondingly, the bottom row is the drought region. So more positive response shows more greeny shows more positive response, and more brownie shows more negative response. So it seems there's so huge heterogeneous response across time and space. The question is, why do some areas or times exhibit resilience through green up positive response, while others are vulnerable through brown down or increased mortality like the negative response? So here I'm using the local scale exploration to illustrate if the local gradients can help explain the heterogeneity in the drought response. The main hypothesis I'm using here is the water depth hypothesis. Is to illustrate the accessibility of water to trees. So as you can see, for the shallow water table depth, during the non-drought situation, the water table is showing as the light blue line here, and the tree is kind of under the waterlogging and anoxic environment because the root is submerged under the water. So the growth of the tree will be limited by very limited access to air, to oxygen. But during the drought situation, the water depth decreases. In this case, and the tree is not in the waterlogging and anoxic environment anymore. So in this case, their growth may be relieved by the drought because they have better access to the air, and they still have good access to the water. And on the contrary, if you look at the deep water table depth, the trees with the deep water table depth, they kind of always have a harder access to the water during the drought. So if this is true, I would predict. So on the right panel is the drought response on the y-axis, and the water table depth, the hydrological gradient as the y-x-axis. So if this is true, I would predict the shallow water table forest would have a higher or more positive response than the deep water table during the drought. So I tested this hypothesis in the local scale and across the 3 droughts in the south, particularly the southern Amazon, which is the area that so it's too detailed. Okay, so what I find is that a consistent decreasing pattern are observed across the 3 droughts, and so this shows the drought response in Southern Amazon were driven by the water depth, that's the local hydrological gradient in this region. So this seems that my hypothesis is consistent with my prediction. But so very intriguingly, what I found is the trend is very different from the regions outside of the Amazon, like the Guyana Shelter on the north and the Everwet Amazon is also different. So this shows the patterns outside of some southern Amazon seem not supported by the local hydrological hypothesis. So this indicates scale really matters. So on the second round, I want to see what drives the local heterogeneity have such a diverse response, and what makes the regions different. So I'm using the climate, soil fertility, and the tree traits to did a cluster analysis, and to show that 3 regions that they may have broadly similar properties in climate, soil properties, and the tree functional traits. And I expect the species may behave broadly similarly due to their sharing key region characteristics. So this is a little detail, but the idea is that based on the region properties, like the soil fertility and the tree characteristics, I further apply these 3 hypotheses to illustrate if the region really make a difference in the drought response. And the 3 perspective is measure the proximity of water to trees and the proximity of trees to water. And the soil fertility is like a mediator to quantify and mediate the interactions between the water and the trees. So in the short word is, so this is a little complicated results, but the main idea is the soil fertility and the tree height do explain different dependence on the drought response on water depth. So this means that even though we see the consistent decreasing patterns as function of the water depth, but this kind of dependence is really mediated by the soil fertility and the tree height. And that also drives the different patterns that we observe across different regions. And so from this figure, it also shows like the tall forest with deep roots have easier access to the soil water. With the infertile soils is kind of let the forest grow slowly and invest more in their xylem to like have a stronger resistance to the water deficit stress. So in this case, this shows that the tall forest with the infertile soils tend to be more resilient. So according to the previous analysis, I mapped a resilience map of the Amazon forest on the left panel. The more greeny shows more resilient, and the more browny shows more vulnerable. And corresponding on the right side panel is the distribution of the different ecological strategies underlying the resilience, combining by the either tree height, soil fertility, and the water depth. So this indicates the most protective, the most resilient forest should be under the protective power of shallow water table, tall trees, and infertile soils. And But what really raised our attention most is to explore the vulnerability and how can we better preserve the Amazon forest. So here this shows the red area is actually the most vulnerable forest that is coupled by the arc of deforestation, which is the at the very high risk in Amazon because there are most of the human-induced deforestation and degradation happening here. And so the vulnerable intact forest is actually very near to the human-induced deforestation area. So this raises a strong concern about the forest in this region, and correspondingly, the arrow above the map is actually the wind system, and it also shows the most vulnerable forests are predominantly situated under the prevailing winds, where that bring the most moist Amazon air to the south. So it's like from the east to west and to south, and this would with high risk to maintain the evapotranspiration to feed the atmospheric rivers to sustain the South America breadbasket in the agritourism, which is like consistent to the yesterday results. So in summary, the next step is to consider all these kind of diverse properties of the Amazon forest. And the general solution is, of course, to end the deforestation, degradation, and to expand the restoration and mitigate the greenhouse gas emission. But more importantly is we want to locally do a better conservation considering their local hydrological environment as well as the regional differences, like their tree height or the soil fertility. And the most important area that is the intact forest near the arc of deforestation is facing the highest risk, and we need to raise the immediate attention to let people do a better conservation. That's it. I hope I did not cross the time.
We want to take a few minutes at the end of each talk for clarifying questions about that talk. Don't sit down. Come back up. We have enough time in this session to have a few, if there's a couple of clarifying questions specific to each talk, and then we'll have the plenary discussion at the end.
Shuli, thank you so much for this fantastic talk.
Can you go back to the slide, Shuli?
I just wanted to clarify. So what you say basically that shallow water table means more resilience, right? Or
from the physical water accessibility, yes, it's more resilient.
Yeah. So shallow, you mean when water is close to the roots?
Yes, when the water table decreases.
Yeah, I see. The question is about soil fertility. So what you say that those forests that could be considered like unproductive, slowly growing and all that, they actually invest more into resilience, and they are more resilient. And
the infertile, right? Less fertile soil.
Less fertile soil. And how did you map those patches that we know stem from like some patches of highly fertile soils in the Amazon that somebody attributes to past human impact? Yeah. So what can you say about resilience of forests on these human, as we assume, human-derived fertile soils? If you can say something.
That's so.
We can help.
Yeah, I asked the question, Anthony helped me later. It happened. The first question is why the infertile soil is more resilient. It's because, for example, the trees, they grow in the infertile soils, they kind of experience harsher environment, which is similar to the drought. So they kind of have to, because there are less nutrients, they have to grow slower than the forest grow in the fertile soils. And in that case, they kind of have to, like the economic leaf spectrum, if they invest more in the stem to have a better foundation, and this means that they tend to have invest less in leaves, but they invest more in the stem and in the roots, and in that case, they can be more resilient during the drought. It's kind of just the harsh environments like is similar to each other that cause them have the adaptation to the two situations. And for the human-induced fertile soil fertility, do you mean like a human-induced soils could also how does this affect the resilience? And how does
Yeah,
this
how did you just did you see some pattern of these particular soils for resilience?
The black soils.
The black.
Terra Preta de Índio is a famous place.
We don't know.
Oh.
But it's a good idea.
Yeah.
But
Terra Preta.
I have not really think about this.
Yeah,
but-
no, I was
but-
just going to say that this is a scale problem. Because Terra Preta is just a small spot, patches of land that have been made fertile by both the waste from human settlements, Indian natives, and the waste mixed with charcoal, and then put in the soil, and then it builds anthropogenic fertile soil. But they are very restricted, and probably in the scale that Shuli analyzed, they didn't. You cannot see this Terra Preta
I
points.
thought it's like from the Andean mountain, like the west is most of the fertile soils, and the west go
But
to the.
But Terra Preta are presumed human-created patches that are everywhere.
Oh,
Everywhere.
okay. Oh, in
From-
that
from-
case, that's
from-
really a good question, but I don't know.
But the question, why is it important? Because we can hear that these humans contributed so much to the Amazon well-being by creating this fertile soil.
Yeah,
The Amazon would have died without humans. But what Shuli is showing in her fantastic talk, that actually trees are more resilient in the long-term persistence on what we
Infertile.
call infertile
Infertile.
soils, but they are perfectly fine for the forest. So that's my, like propaganda.
Okay, I think we'll move on to Benara Lugmi, who I'm very happy to introduce. And let me find your talk.
Black earth was not for forest, it was for agriculture. This down.
So I'm very happy to introduce Ladara. She's a great example of a local and a global scholar. She comes originally, like I said, from Mato Grosso, where I think she got her bachelor's degree, but went to the Amazon for her master's degree at Brazil's National Institute for Research on the Amazon, before going to the UK to get her PhD, and now she's a postdoc here at TUM, where she still works in Manaus on the Amazon face experiment, which is what she's going to tell us about. But I just want to say, I first met you about something like 10 years ago. I don't remember exactly, in the backyard of a famous ecologist at INPA. And since then, I keep meeting her at different meetings, and have discovered she's one of a generation of fantastic rising star scientists who got their initial training in the Amazon, in the institutions in the Amazon. And there's a whole cohort of them that are now competing for jobs to get back to work there as professors, but in the meantime, you'll see what she's been working on. Ladara, please. It's true.
Hi everyone, good morning. Hope you can hear me okay. So yeah, I'm Lainara, and we're gonna talk today about how we can assess the effects of elevated CO2, impacting ecology and the resilience of the Amazon forest. So it was really great that Shuli already gave us a bit of context about the Amazon forest, and we're gonna keep going. So I work now with Dr. Unraveling, and she's still ill, so she's not here. So I'm kind of representing the group in a way. And maybe we don't need this slide, but let's do it. So why does it matter, right? The Amazon forest. So it's a place that stores a lot of carbon. About 1/4 of the global terrestrial carbon is found there. In terms of water, which is kind of the main focus of this meeting, it's really important in controlling water regime, rainfall patterns, and water recycling across huge areas of the South America. And it also harbors millions of plants, fungi, bacteria, things that we don't even know. And this diversity is translated into different functions, which therefore translate into this balance of forest functioning. And in the end, we have its importance for social economy, so people derive products like timber, fish, fruits, and compounds of pharmaceutical use. So how, I think is a big question, how the Amazon rainforest, the largest tropical forest in the world, will respond to elevated CO2. So I feel like a very simple scale here, just to show that this might depend on what we call the CO2 fertilization effect, and there's quotes on this, which people, well, there's this hypothesis of a positive response, so forests would absorb this extra carbon, and we're gonna discuss that. But also there's a lot of feedbacks of CO2 with climate. So we know elevated CO2 can trigger temperature, this could trigger droughts, fire, etc. So this kind of fine balance will actually result in how will forests respond in the end. So we talk first about the feedbacks on climate. So at the leaf level, CO2, extra CO2 can promote this higher water use efficiency in plants, which I think we talked yesterday, which means more carbon being assimilated per water transpired. So this reduced transpiration due to stomata closing will impact, of course, water and nutrient cycling as well. So when we talk about water, so water vapor would go from the transpiration and contribute to formation of clouds and precipitation. When this is decreased, of course, there's a change in temperature and rainfall distribution. And another, a bit more hidden impact of this decreased transpiration from plants, it's below ground actually. So a lot of nutrients from soils, and we were discussing fertility just now, they actually move from the soil through the plant because of plant transpiration. So this mass flow, so these differences in gradients of concentration. So if we have reduced transpiration, we might have less nutrients flowing from soils to plants. And then a bit more like general scale, we have the feedbacks on climate. So we might have a positive feedback loop, which would work like this. So we have more CO2 in the atmosphere, we have higher temperatures, we have hotter and drier climate, we have more droughts, fire, insect outbreaks, the trees die, so mortality releases more CO2 to the atmosphere, and then the cycle goes on. And this increased mortality does not release CO2 only at the actual dying of the tree, but for decades with decomposition of organic matter as well. And when we have occurrence of fire, there's a higher chance then of fire occurring again in that same area. And then we might lose biodiversity, which means losing function of many different species in this ecosystem, which therefore translates into loss of forest resilience. So the forest could become from a sink to a source of carbon. And then eventually, which we don't want, of course, but they might reach a tipping point, which is this transition to a new stable state that might look like a degraded forest or a savanna-like forest. And then the other side of the scale, which was the positive side, but let's talk about it. So the CO2 fertilization effect is like the stimulation of photosynthesis with CO2, and then the plants will take it up through photosynthesis, which is kind of the hypothesis one in this figure. But there could be other resources limiting this. So light, water, nutrients in the soil, and especially nutrients in the soil. So about 60% of the Amazon rainforest actually grow in low fertility soils, like poor in phosphate, calcium, magnesium, so these rock-derived soils. And we actually have a large-scale experiment near Manaus, where we proved recently that phosphate, is the main limiting to forest productivity. So, although there might be this positive CO2 effect, we expect this limitation by nutrients in some areas. And then this was kind of hypothesis 3, but 2, and then 3 would be how the plants would actually allocate carbon also matters. So this balance between, is this extra carbon going to roots, to leaves, to metabolites, to respiration, so this would impact where this scale will shift. So we don't know how that's going to happen, and I kind of listed 2 important things that could impact how they will respond. So what we just said, so the fate and residence time of carbon in this forest will really matter. So is this carbon going to productivity but also mortality? Is respiration increasing? What's the role of microbes in the soil? Are they getting more active or less? Is the composition being accelerated or retarded? Is there herbivory? Are there stocks of carbon in the soil as well? And just to illustrate this point, there is this paper from Bremen. So they show here, probably you know this, so this is declining of the carbon sink capacity of the Amazon forest. So here, maybe I cannot, yeah. So here in the middle, we have forest productivity in the Amazon being kind of flattened in the last decades. And here we have the rates of mortality increasing in the last decades, which translates to this first panel A, a declining trend of the sink capacity in the Amazon forest. And one of the hypotheses is that actually these forests are becoming more accelerated in their tree life cycle. So they call this kind of short circuit. So trees, they grow fast, but they die young. So although there's more carbon getting in, there is also more carbon getting out. So this could be one fate. And another important mechanism, which is particularly important to me, which is my field of research, is what happens below ground. So the actual capacity of plants to respond will depend on how plastic these plant mechanisms like root morphology, leaf traits, how they use water, how they acquire water and nutrients, how they will respond. So things like roots, fungi, mycorrhiza, microorganisms will really play a role. And then just a quick kind of advertisement. We are installing the Amazon Face experiment in Manaus. So the idea here is to kind of have a glimpse into the future and see how the forest will respond based on this kind of questions I just raised, unknowns that I raised now. So we have 6 towers, so 3 will have 200 ppm CO2 more than the ambient CO2, and 3 will have ambient air. And this is a real picture, so the towers are being installed, and we aim to have the experiment up and running by the end of the year, and hopefully provide some answers before things get too bad, I hope. And just like a summary of the project, we have different research areas. So of course, one big goal is to understand the fate of carbon. So how is it being used and recycled through litter, to roots, to soil. Nutrients, which is my, of course, favorite one. So how nutrient cycles, is there nutrient limitation actually to the growth of this forest? And water cycle from the leaf level, like stomata closing, water use efficiency, to the ecosystem level, how this will impact vapor production, etc. And of course, this is the first phase experiment, so free air CO2 enrichment experiment in such a hyper diverse forest. So we are also interested in understanding different species or functional plant groups, how they will respond to CO2, if they're going to respond in different ways and why. And finally, the socio-economic impacts. So this forest provides services, so how this will be impacted, how will this impact populations also in the region. And the integration with modeling, it's very important, so to generate hypotheses to be tested in the field, but also take data from the actual field experiment to incorporate into models and make future projections even better. And just a bunch of pictures. So we've been monitoring these plots for almost 10 years now. And so we have a very good baseline data coming from stem respiration, root morphology, litter fall, everything you can think about. And here we have this open top chamber. So this is like a small scale CO2 enrichment that we have also running for 4 or 5 years now. So we study the effect of CO2 in the smaller trees. And this is pictures of the construction of the actual rings where we're gonna pump CO2 and see what how the forest will respond. And I think my take-home messages from this presentation is that although there might be mechanisms by which the forest can adapt to a world with elevated CO2, we don't know how this new system will function. This is completely, it might be, I assume, very different to what we see now. So an experiment like this, I guess, will provide us a glimpse to, okay, this is how it's gonna look to make this effort of conservation even stronger. And a climate-driven degradation will not only impact the forest functioning itself, but will then scale to agriculture system, energy, and health of millions of people in the region and beyond. So we aim, hopefully, to inform decision-making in short-term, long-term, and guide environmental conservation in the Amazon region due to the huge importance of this area. And here there's a QR code for the website of the project. If you are interested, you can always talk to David, that is just there, or with me or with Anya, and I'm happy to take questions if you have some. Thank you.
Maybe a quick question.
Really fascinating experiment. I have been following this. It's very close to my heart and very close geographically to the area where I dwelled for decades actually. And it's really fascinating. I have many questions, but the immediate one is about when you say the phosphorus limitation and the nutrient limitation considering the atmospheric influence. Because I don't know specifically for the area you chose for the phase, but I know of filtering, of the system is adapted to filtering nutrients from dry and wet deposition rather than from taking from the soil. So if phosphorus is locked into the mineral phase in the soil, and you have mycorrhizae can mobilize it and make it available, but this is not the point in this system because it's all getting it from Sahara dust that crosses the Atlantic and lands in the Amazon. How are you measuring wet and dry deposition?
Yes, so we are going to try to measure everything possible, and this is one of the things, but if I may speak from, I guess, personal scientific opinion, I think the amount of phosphorus that actually comes to this specific area is not a lot. And in general, I think 0.01% of what the plant needs comes from these sources. And it's kind of very sporadic in time and space also. And I think what really matters in this type of forest, or infertile forest we were discussing, is the recycling of the organic matter. So when we walk in this forest, we see this litter layer. So you walk in a carpet of litter covered with roots. So they're going straight into the source. So I think what matters more is the recycling of what is already there, so the actual organic matter. Of course, in time, dust might be important, but for kind of annual budget, I would assume the organic pool is super, super crucial. So whatever we do CO2, maybe changes the carbon to nutrient ratios, the composition, all of this kind of assuming very small mechanisms will really impact how the forest will grow or not. So I would vote more for that.
Okay, thank you.
See you later. I'll come back.
Come back. Okay, so this one. Lapola. So I'm very happy to, first I just said this is a fantastic experiment, and we also, he's not going to talk about it. David will speak next about deforestation, which he's also an expert on. But there's a network of these CO2 enrichment experiments, the free air CO2 enrichment experiments, and almost all of them have been conducted in temperate zones, mostly in monocultures, mostly in even age stands that are like loblolly pine in the southeastern U.S. And the most relevant forests on the planet, like we just heard about now, have not yet been studied for their effects of CO2 enrichment. And so this experiment is the first. Like she said, it's a diverse forest. It's an old growth forest. It's fantastic. Anyway, I just love it. Even though it's a lot of work, but it's a great thing to do. So next I want to introduce David Lapola, who, like I said, is one of the directors or leaders of this Amazon face experiment, but he's also a great expert in Amazon forest degradation. So he got his, I think you started at Sao Paulo State University, and got a master's at the National Institute for Space Research in Brazil, and then a PhD at the Max Planck Institute, not here, but in Kassel University. And now is a professor at University of Campinas. He's the old man of this panel, having only had his PhD for 14 years or so. And so, David, please come join us.
I don't know if I should speak here at the microphone. I think it's not on.
We're not, I guess we're
Yeah,
not.
you can hear me well. There. Okay. Thanks a lot, Scott. Thanks, Anastasia. Thanks, Anya, who's not here, unfortunately, for the invitation. I have to tell you, I'm going to give you a very brief talk here. It's more inspirational, as I was requested. Not too many graphs and this stuff. More to, inspire a discussion here afterwards. And I have to warn you as well that I came to know about this conference in the last minute, like a few days ago, so I wasn't aware. But I think we can make a good discussion here about this very important and kind of unknown process happening in the Amazon and other tropical forests, surely. This project aims is analysis, integration, modeling of the Earth system is part of the Future Earth initiative. I'm part of the scientific committee of AIMS, and they requested me in 2019 to host the annual meeting of the scientific committee in Brazil. And I suggested we made it in Manaus, and they said, well, usually when we have the annual meetings, we hold a workshop, a parallel workshop, either before or afterwards the scientific committee meeting. So since you are the host, you can propose a topic for the workshop, and we can call specialists on that, we can pay them. And at that time, there was a fierceful discussion in Science magazine, by the way, about Amazon forest degradation. What was the extent of it, the best way to observe it with remote sensing, and the impacts, for example, for the carbon cycle in terms of emissions. And when I say a fierceful discussion, it's in the scientific way. I mean, there was an article published there, then another group of authors questioned the article there in a letter to Science, then the authors of the first study replied to that, and this became of kind of not well solved. So we decided to gather this group of scientists, and this ended up very well. We decided to, given this discussion was taking place in Science magazine, to send a review article on the subject to Science magazine, and it was published beginning of last year, January 2023. Okay, so a bit more than 1 year ago. And it was, I will come back to, I don't need to, make myself here too proud of it, publishing Science, but I just wanted to tell you that this had a decisive, publishing Science had a decisive role in what happened afterwards, which was the question I was requested to talk here, how to make the message reach stakeholders here. But we'll come back to that in a minute or so. You probably use, or if somebody, even if not from this field of knowledge, if I ask you what is deforestation, you would probably answer a kind of correct answer. So it's not difficult to imagine what is deforestation. It's in terms of concept or definitions, it's a land cover that is classified as forest, and afterwards it's not a forest anymore. It's something else. So what you see in the left-hand side of the image is not a forest anymore. In this case, it's barren land, but with time it could become a pasture or soybean plantation, whatever. This process is very well known. Who causes it, how it's done, where it's done, who funds it, and this, since the 80s or late 70s, we have a very good knowledge about it. So if we're not stopping deforestation, it's not because of lack of knowledge. Okay, it's something else. But we can't say the same for degradation, which is, let's say, a more silent process happening in the Amazon. And when I say in the Amazon, you can also imagine it's happening in Congo forests and Southeast Asia as well. But the article was focused in the Amazon, where we have more evidence of that. We wanted to write a general review article for all tropical forests, but we were not able because we didn't have evidence of this process in the other forests. But it's reasonable to imagine it's happening there as well. So what is degradation here? We are considering degradation as disturbances that can happen and can change properties of the forest. And these properties can be changing the carbon cycle, changing the species, changing microclimate characteristics, and even in the way people benefit from the forest. So this is kind of new because people, forest dwellers themselves, they can classify, if we can't observe it with satellites, people themselves can classify this forest is degraded, okay? With that definition in mind, we listed what we consider were the 4 main disturbances leading to degradation. So the disturbance itself is not the degradation, like timber extraction from the left side to the right side, fires, edge effects, or even extreme droughts, and this last one is more polemic, but I'll come to that. These 4, of course we could list others, but we consider these are the 4 main disturbances in terms of extent and availability of data. And they are not the disturbance itself, but they are the disturbance that lead to a degraded condition of the forest, okay? So timber extraction, it's easy to understand. It's like the loggers, and basically this is all illegal, like there's rough estimates that 60% or so of the selective logging is illegal. And even though the name sounds beautiful, selective logging, but it's not legal. Okay? The loggers, they enter the forest and it can be far away from the deforestation frontier. Okay? They select the best valued woods. They cut this wood. In the process, there are 2 or 3 other trees that fall in the process, so they take out the interesting log for them, take it away and leave the forest there. So this is the basic difference between degradation and deforestation. The forest continues to be a forest. The forest continues to be a forest, but in a different state now, in a degraded state. Fire is perhaps the among these 4 disturbances is the disturbance that is best well known and is easier to observe with current technology, remote sensing we have. And we are talking about fires here, for example, that spread from a farm into the neighboring forest there. Understory fire, for example, it kills a few trees only, not all of it. It's not a huge wildfire that destroys everything and you know, the forest is not a forest anymore. No, this is a small fire that kills a few of the trees. It can, of course, go over long distances, but basically the forest continues to be a forest. Edge effect, the third here. Let's consider a deforested area, like we have here in this image, or even the cover there of the magazine. The neighboring forest to that deforested area, the first 100 or 200 or 300 meters of this neighboring forest, it is now exposed to stronger winds, higher temperature, low humidity. So slowly, this forest at the edge of a deforested area, it will get degraded as well. Okay? And last but not least, the extreme drought. This is polemic because one can argue, I mean, we know that when we have extreme droughts, we have a loss of carbon. It's a low intensity loss, like 2% in an area, you're gonna lose 2% of the carbon there. But the point is that it hits a huge area of the basin compared to other disturbances we were talking about. Fire, for example, has a high intensity. Where it hits, it damages a high percentage of the carbon there. But in comparison to the extent that droughts occur, it's in a smaller area, fire. And it's polemic because one can argue, yeah, but there are natural droughts as well. But our argument in the study was that these droughts are becoming more frequent. And we even had studies, recent studies, arguing that this El Nino now, the 23-24 El Nino, there's a high likelihood that it's human caused, the probability. So that's the argument here. If we are causing a higher frequency of these droughts, then we can consider it's a disturbance leading to degradation of the Amazon forest. And all the same, as just to finish here, 2 things. First, in the same way we have for deforestation, it's long known that there are the proximate drivers of deforestation and there are the underlying drivers. So we try to classify here what we thought or what we think are the underlying drivers of each of these 4 disturbances there. I'm depicting just a few of them in the lower part of the figure there, like the demand for timber, lack of governance, cultural factor, migration. So some of these underlying drivers, they are related to deforestation as well. And even some of the disturbances, so the proximate drivers there, they can be related to deforestation, but others might have no relation to deforestation. Okay, like global climate change, of course there is a relation that deforestation leads to emissions, but It's not global climate change that is causing deforestation, okay? But it can cause degradation via the extreme droughts, for example. So this is important to know that part of the degradation occurring in the Amazon might not be related to deforestation. And this has an importance for us to consider the measures to tackle it, to curb degradation. They might have to be different from the measures we take for deforestation. I would go over the impacts here, but I'm conscious of time here. Just want to accelerate a little bit here. So these are the extent of the 4 drivers, starting with drought in red, fire in green. Selective logging is very bad quality data we have available, but that's what we have today. In yellow, and then the edge effects occurring all over where you have deforestation in purple. And I'm pasting there the total deforestation map just for you to compare. So basically, if we consider the 4 drivers of degradation, we have something like 40% of the remaining forests being subject to one or more than one of these forms of degradation. Okay? And quickly, how to bring it closer to stakeholders. I think in this case, I'm not advocating here that everyone should publish in Science, but in this specific case, it made a big difference because it got so much visibility in terms of the press coverage afterwards that it naturally reached the government levels there. Not only the press stories, but in Brazil and abroad, but also with policy briefs rewrote and perhaps handled in the right hands at that time. But it comes out that a few months later, Brazil, the Ministry of the Environment, was re-inaugurating or relaunching the National Plan for Control of Deforestation that was abandoned by the previous administration in Brazil. And now, in the beginning, or more or less this time of the year, last year, they were relaunching it. In Brazil, it's nicknamed, there is an acronym, it's called PPCDAM. It's the Plan for Control of Deforestation. And it was the first time this plan mentioned explicitly degradation, explicitly cited this study there, saying this is something we have to take care of, and we're going to develop strategies to do that. They are not covering everything, because some of the forms of degradation are difficult to observe. But that's a start, I think. And so they're not monitoring everything. There's a challenge how we implement monitoring systems like we have for deforestation, that we do the same for degradation. Nobody knows exactly how we could do that. That's why we need to discuss, invest resources in research on that topic. And this is just one example here how we could bring it close to other stakeholders, not only to policymakers, but also to communities living close to the forest. This is a project, the photo you see there is a project in Pará, in the interior of Pará state, where they used second-hand cell phones and placed them in strategic locations inside the reserve there. So the cell phone keeps listening to sounds. And if it hears a sound of a chainsaw, for example, it gives an alarm there for the community and for authorities to go there. So this is just one example how we can implement this sort of monitoring, taking this concept of smart forests. I stop by here. Thanks for the attention. Thanks for the invitation again. I'm happy to take questions.
I think because of time, we're going to have to move on to the last talk and hopefully have a little bit of a plenary session at the end. I'm really pleased next to introduce Minguo Li-Margraf, who I had the pleasure of meeting just at this conference a few days ago. And I'm very excited about this next presentation for a couple different reasons. One is Minguo sort of comes to this from a different perspective. Her initial training was in journalism, and so she's not only, I think, an expert in thinking about how to communicate these things to a broader audience, but also has become an expert herself in the practical application of the ecology of understanding rainforests and rainforest restoration. So she's been working on this, let me just keep her presentation up here. She's, so let me see how to put this. So, some presentation. So Minguo has gotten a number of awards. She's awarded the top 10 female public welfare figures in China by the China Women's Federation in 2013. She's awarded the first the Forest China Ecological Heroes Award by the National Forestry Administration in 2015, and the World Heritage Yongheng Award from the World Intangible Cultural Heritage Office in 2017, many other things. And anyway, this is where we get to see the practical application, and we're very excited to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I was thought I was outside at the beginning among all those excellent scientists here. I was obliged to be here because a few days ago I was invited by our dear friend, Mr. Laurent Berlot, to France, to the Cognac Vineyard, because he told me he has a great thinking to actually practice 10 kilometers per year and 1,000 kilometers within 10 years. You want to do a biodiversity corridor. And this corridor somehow linked to us, because many days back he met my later husband at Xishuangbanna, Yunnan, China. As you heard my name, Minguo Li-Margraf. The last name was after by a German biologist. And he has been to China in 1997. By that time, he's sent by German government, GTZ organization. I don't know if the German colleagues knows this organization. Is sent by for the manage the German aid program called Yunnan Xishuangbanna Rainforest Protection and Recovery Project, and huge funds by the German government. At that time, China doesn't really know what is awareness of rainforest, and me too. I was a journalist until 1999 Expo in Kunming. I met this guy, and he gave me the business card, and he said, I'm the biologist working in Yunnan Xishuangbanna. He doesn't know who I am. He knows I'm journalist, but he doesn't know where I come from. Actually, I come from the region, from Xishuangbanna, from Yunnan. And he touched me because he said, and I don't understand why our forests need to be protect and recover. He said, okay, look, Xishuangbanna is very south of China. Compared with Amazon, probably very rare people to know exists a very rare forest, rainforest. Until 1970s, we discovered Dictrocarps species, the groups in there, and the CAST, our Science Academy, has discovered several forest groups and was sure rainforests exist in China, in Yunnan, Xishuangbanna, and in Hainan. So it's a very small one, but very meaningful to us. Until 1950, because 1950s, we was a shift cultivation and the rubber plantation what took away most of the rainforest. It means before we realized that we have a rainforest already cut down. So it's become very fragile system there. So and this German biologist, Dr. Margraf, went there. So I decided to quit my job and following him, go back to hometown and to work with him as an assistant and wife, and his children's mother. And so we worked together and we did a lot of things. And this is the why we want to do as a family base, because early days when me participate in his work, we participate in many seminars, conference, like I met him in the Expo conference, and in many of these situations we found a little bit helpless. We don't know where to start. So we decide for our children, we want to start from ourselves. So in spite of all the money he gave to the government, different projects, we decided to use our own money to found a little center called Tianzi Biodiversity Center. Why called Tianzi? Tian means nature, Zi means seeds, seed of heaven and beyond. We want to bring back the natural rainforest for our next generation. So start from ourselves, give back rainforest to our two daughters, which is here also. And during Joseph's past years, he has been already developed called rainforestation farming in Philippines, Southeast Asia, many places, and has until today some are very successfully appeared in the globe. And for ourselves, we have painted with a very artistic way, more than 2,000 of these paintings. We describe how the pannier trees, how it looks, how should we plant, and how to put the second year or third year, the middle trees, and at the end we have a farming, rainforest farming, or also called a jungle farming. So many things can insert inside, and then biodiversity come back. So now I couldn't see here. So for me to tell our workers, work with us, they are farmers. And in our place, there's not so many people who understand what called monoculture or biodiversity farming. So we have to teach them one by one. So we have first of all to do seedling, pick up seeds from jungle, from wild, one by one, each one by others. So then we tell them how to do seedlings, and we draw these things and make seedling bag. And to city, we also gave them some sample how to make a city not look like so pale and only on the ground, they change each year, waste a lot of money. So we did many things in the city. And until the day 2003, when my second daughter delivered and he quit completely his official job, we only practice our own rainforestation farming at Tianzi Mountain, because by then, 2004, we found a piece of land in the border area of Burma. Because by that time, Sichuan is very crazy with rubber plantation. Most of the land was took away by rubber plantation, the low altitude. Below 1,000 altitude, only rubber. You can see nothing. If you fly to Jinghong, you will see the footprint around city, nothing else. So only few little, like our home beside the Mekong River has a little jungle, but only 1 hectare. For practice jungle farming, we have to find a larger land. So we went to Bulang Mountain, was far away from city, like a border area of Burma. Was shift cultivation burn, and really nothing left. Just one generation, or 50 years after, managed by new generation. So we said, why make us make this decision? Because we saw when we went there to visit the tea village, there's a tea producer area. We visited this village, we found out the big trees, they're already dead. They're on top, they're still hanging Vanda and Carulia. They're still there and still try to survive, but we know they were going to die because the tree died. So from there I learned, if you want to orchid survive, you have to build up rainforest. there are more than 10 species Vanda family in our area. So nowadays we know in our reserve we have more than 100 species. So not even not count other trees. This comes. This is the details what we have to learn inside it. So that's what orchid brought us, make up our mind. We want this land. We want this land by our own private endorsement and work. Until today, it's totally different. So I want to show you a few pictures. Last night I just found out quickly. This when we got it is only open woods and the green part, nothing else. It's where we're located in Jinhong city, and where we first day we put our Tianzi biodiversity reserve. Actually, that we wrote retreat is wrong, but never mind. This local village, and we plant the first tea tree. So now you can see that picture is now. That was before. And some German colleagues was also come to celebrate our first milestone. So this was before. It's really sad. This was our first house. We were living there in this like cottage type. Until today, it's just 20 years, from 2004 until now. So every day I'm working on that, and I was really proud to present you what is looking now. So each of the waterfall, I have 7 lakes and thousands of birds, and you can hear the sound totally different. At the beginning, I was constantly burned by farmers because they wanted to do cow farming, but now they are not doing anymore because they said, okay, now they more or less understand what we are doing. Because our village become the most rich village because of tea. And our tea also, Camellia sinensis, also one species growing inside this forest. But you cannot barely say that the tea garden is a tea forest, because it's one species among others. It's a biodiversity, because we want a farmer. Yeah, we want a farmer to learn from us. We cannot tell. We have to do it. So until 2021, my second daughter, 18 years old, I gave this to them, their tea. So this tea, the first picking, a farmer will pick the tea 3 years old, but we start to harvest our tea 18 years. This is the flower who brought us to the place. Now this flower is blooming in the inside forest, but it's not enough. If only doing rainforestation farming, not really has a urge to stand here to explain you what a little achievement compare to Amazon, very little achievement to present here. I come here because finally we go through the one technique of germination of orchid seeds. Inside the jungle, that's the orchid seeds, like the capsules, there's about 1 million in one capsules. Sometimes 500,000, 1 million, sometimes 1 million, a huge bunch of dusty look seeds. So you can observe, I observe those orchids, and we'll work with the Yunnan University scientist group, only specific on the Yunnan orchid species. So we finally found out Vanda cruleus fungi. They are fungi seed symbiosis system. So we have for protect those orchid species, we have to find each fungi for each orchid. That's thinking like this. So through many years, from this one to that one to that one, finally we found the Vandas, which my second daughter's name is Vanda. After this. Yes, because of her, we took this land and we spent all our savings only for this land. So now this purple flower has come into a huge historical moment because this year, through past years' observation, we found out that the humidity is back and the fungi is back. And while the forest is ready now, you see the pictures, and we have fungi is ready. So everything come together. So this year we will doing the treatment inside the lab of all our orchid seeds, and we will let them flying back to the jungle. At the beginning, I only have 20 seeds each year. I don't want to waste them. So after the study, we know now we have a confidence to release those seeds in our new technique way, and to let them, when this rainy season come, we will let them go back home, return the home. This flower brought us to this land. So we will bring this flower back, so give them a home. So our framework is done, home is ready, please, Vanda come back. So I call this a Million Vanda project because we have prepared 3 million seeds. More than, we have 220,000 capsules now, and we can have at least 3 million seedlings this year. But I'm not sure they will survive. But let's take it, 1 million survive. So that will be done in a way. So it's some pictures from a sky view of our land, from bare land to now, and there's the water. This was covered by algae. So we did some science work, like a study point where I invited a lot of scientists to come. So they also check the Stanley bee and many bee, wax bee, all those how to say this type of group of animals. So it shows our biodiversity is back. And we also did there's many. This is with the Ecological University, and we also did use the meta barcoding. This is a very new to us. So we did last year to monitoring our biodiversity reserve in the water reservoir, how many species coming back. It's quite impressive. From no water until now have water. Well, our water is funny. The higher the mountain, the water also come up. Impressive. So the lake, you see the many few lakes appears and bird. So I already mixed to talking the Vanda and our forest for rainforest farming, which is this term actually founded by Dr. Margraf. And he was passed away 2010. Until now, it's 14 years with 3 women in the help of like a dear friend, Mr. Laurent Bellot, like a brand Galland, and later we together with this old growth tea forest, we made a new brand. We call the Spirit of Tea, Charling. So with those friends from beginning as eyewitness with me, so he insisted I have to come here to tell a little bit what we have done in the far south China. I'm with this work, I would say it's beautiful work. As this job or this life chose me, chose our family, and I'm happy to hear all the explanations you have done past days, and I'm really eager to learn more from all of you. So Tianzi Mountain, Tianzi Reserve is also wait for you to, if you have time and opportunity to come, you are most invited. So this is an ancient tea. This tea is 1,800 years old. So this is old growth in our area, but they grow very slow because these are generation by generation picked up by farmers, tea farmers. So they are not grow very fast each year. They just grow like a bonsai, but they are very old. So we are going to build this tea forest like ancient our ancestors. So the farmer pick up tea, and with Charlene, we made the new brand. So this is like we climb on we passed the most difficult part. We are now in a very profound and nice step after 24 years. So we made a lot of artistic work. We do exhibition. We invite photographers shooting the farmers, and we do biological. I went up to the snow mountain too. So from there, I know the water is also come down to the Yunnan from snow mountain to rainforest. So my personal wish, one day I have 7 gardens in Yunnan, and most of them are fulfilled with biodiversity flowers. So some achievement, we did a little bit of close-up makeup. So some talking community with a journalist, and the BBC has made a wider channel. At the last, he thanks Tian's biodiversity because we gave them a lot of guidance and tips, as my daughter, Vanda and Vanda. So this is a great opportunity to, forgive my awful English. I don't really talk that much, but I hope you understand why I'm here. And one thing I've almost missed is that if the mist not exists in the forest, the orchid doesn't grow too. And I said that the most profound water exists inside the orchid's roots. Orchid roots can grow meters long. And the silver surface, they absorb water and become green, and open and close. It's like we have 2 seasons. With this skill, they survive from a very, very dry winter. So our winter is extremely dry, like desert, like 10, 20. But with this forest, now we have a lake. So we have a floating river. The fog all day, all morning. But Xishuangban, now you go to city, at the morning you see big sunshine. It's no fog anymore. Not like my childhood. Now in the mountain, we have no dry. It's humid now, even now. Most of the villages have no water to drink, but we have our water. So this is a sample we can show villagers. We can give scientists to explore. So we did our job as first step. So next, let's expect Vanda come home, and thank you. I think Antonio said one thing: may health, forest, and love today be our legacy. Thank you.
Okay, so why don't we join? I guess there's another video. We'll show it in a few minutes.
Where's
Maybe
this?
start the discussion first.
You did it?
Yeah. Okay, so we have a great panel here this morning, and so please, there was a question Antonio.
Thank you. Yeah,
We can always call on Antonio for a question. Oh yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I
so I have a question to
the.
I was impressed by the paper or lecture on the CO2 and so on. And I wonder if there are some measurements on the daily dynamics of CO2 concentration in vertical profile in the forest. Because we have 420 ppm, for example, 420 ppm, and even in our small forests and so on, you can measure lower concentration during the day due to photosynthesis. I haven't been in Amazonia, so I know it's a naive, simple question. How does it look with the daily cause of CO2 inside the forest? It's one, and third, and second, are there C3 and C4 plant there, or mostly C3?
Thank you. I'll answer with what I know, but maybe you jump. So actually in a very dense forest, there's not a lot of wind coming. And actually the CO2 concentration tends to be even higher like in the ground, so close to the soil, or
Yeah,
like in the
yeah.
first meters. And I would imagine maybe up there is a bit lower, but it gets really higher because of soil respiration. Exactly.
Yes,
so
it's
during night.
also here that you
Yeah.
have the low light and let's say 500 lower, but then we have this part where there is a light and it goes to 360 and so on, which means that the trees would positively react to higher concentration because they decrease it.
Mhm.
But I think it's very important to have a look. We have down C3 and up would be C4. C4, it means that they very efficiently use the CO2. We did it partly in Africa and only here. Okay, it's all. Thank you.
No, but do you know if we have some more
Oh, the
measurements?
best entitled person to answer this is Antonio here because he did study
Yeah,
exactly
the
on this
power.
some 20 years ago. And there is such a gradient there, but Antonio, maybe you want
Yeah.
to take
Yeah,
over.
C4 plants in rainforests, they are not so predominant like palms.
I would expect them.
Yeah, because of our architecture. Palms can go up to 20 meters, 22 meters, 25. And the C3 trees, they are much higher. And then they dominate the upper canopy. And then you have grasses. But grasses in rainforests, unless it is degraded rainforest, they won't be there. So, I don't know if it answers.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's a really dynamic and they will use it.
Yeah.
They will be happy.
Any other? Yes, next. Okay, now.
No, I have actually 3 questions, if you allow me, because if you have time. One is for David, another is for Shuli, and another is for Minguo. So we start with David. You know, this degradation story has been going on and brewing for a long time. It's really we are really fortunate that we have people like you guys that go there and do the math and measurement and suggestion. What I really think that, you know, we have a satellite around Mars with a LiDAR on board since 2003. We don't have a satellite on Earth with a LiDAR mapping all the forests around the world. And this has always struck me as incredible. You know, we are thinking of going to Mars, colonize Mars, terraforming Mars, and we don't have a tool that is fully capable of actually measuring degradation on a tree-by-tree basis. So if a tree is removed from the forest, a LiDAR with sufficient resolution will detect it. Did you use any LiDAR data?
No, in fact, Antonio, I'm afraid there are already satellites with
But
LiDAR around.
Full coverage? Or just part?
around full coverage, but the frequency it passes over the Amazon is very low, and the resolution it gives you in terms of the image we are expecting to see, you know, the 3D structure of the forest is not enough for monitoring what we want to monitor. But that's something we discuss in the end of the article, that it's a promise. So it's the best alternative today that we evolve in terms of frequency, passing over the Amazon, for example, and in terms of resolution.
What about airborne drones with LiDAR? That you would
Well,
fly?
Jean Meto from INPE
Oh,
did
Jean
the
Meto,
flight
yes.
over the Amazon. He had like 800 transects over the Amazon, and he can tell the difficulty in having that. I mean, you can do that once, but not every year. You know, flying over the Amazon with it was an airplane, in fact, not a drone.
Okay.
So I
Second
think
question.
we are not there yet, but
Okay.
it's a
Hope you
problem.
get soon.
Yeah.
Second question, Shuli. You know, your work is absolutely brilliant, and not because we helped, but it's absolutely brilliant. And I think that what is done in the Amazon should be done everywhere, inclusive in Tian, every place, because this is fine-grained look at the topography and revealing and talking about embracing complexity, revealing how complexity is something that you have to really take in. That depending on where you are in the mountain or in the valley, etc., this will make a big difference in how the system works. And nature is so wise because it distributes different species of plants in different environments and different niches. So, are you planning to expand this analysis to all the continents and to have many papers in Nature?
Yes, I kind of feel very excited to this is like a framework when we first appreciate Antonia is my co-author and provide me all those local heterogeneity by the hand, like the water depth. It's when we responded to the reviewer, we also said this is a framework, and then you can apply the by considering the local heterogeneity and the regional characteristics for the different ecosystems, extend it to other tropical forests, or maybe also include the temperate forest. But maybe the factors, instead of just only considering the light or the water, you may also consider more about the temperature. Yeah, and I'm also kind of curious about apply the whole framework for the degraded forests to see if they behave differently or similarly, or how different they are.
Yeah, fantastic. And make a connection with Minguo. You are Chinese, right? I don't know if you knew each other before. No.
Just very shortly, and he gave me great help. I should thank you, Shuli, and thank you, Scott, to help me with this. I'm also last minute thing.
Yeah.
We will last a minute.
Okay, the third question for Minguo is that you made me feel emotional. I almost cried because it's touchy, very touchy, the way you pose it. And I think this is a crucial way of delivering a message that really touches people. They react and they respond. And I was going to ask whether you know Rainforestation from Gurukula Botanical Sanctuary in India.
I heard about it somewhere.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
She has a very similar,
Really?
very similar. She has a task force of rescuing plants, and they go because Kerala was destroyed. Almost all the forest there is gone. Similar story. And they go in gullies and they go hunting for plants that were extinct. And then they bring in the seeds and the spores for lichens, mushrooms, etc., to this sanctuary, and they learn how the biological cycle goes, they reproduce it, and then they do what they call ecological horticulture, which is going in the forest and creating the niche and putting those mosses and lichens and climbing plants. And then the next phase, the insects start coming because there are more niches available. And then the other animals, and they call the animals the gardeners, and then the nature takes over, and the whole system starts working. I tried to invite her to be here today to tell. It would be wonderful that you meet because you have a very beautiful, similar story. She couldn't come, but you came and you brought this powerful message, and congratulate. I'm really willing to come to visit your site sometime.
Always open.
Yeah.
Just welcome.
Yeah.
Very encouraging.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Is it Anders or?
Yeah.
Okay. Then Rachel.
Yeah. Thank you so much for very inspiring presentations. My question is for David. How do you consider the intact forest landscape method from the University of Maryland? How do you consider that as a tool to kind of identify intact forests, and then that way identify which forests that are degraded? Do you know the?
I have to be frank to you. I'm presenting next week a work it's a kind of more opinionative work in AGU in Vienna, the European Geophysical Union Congress.
Right.
Where I'm arguing that CO2 fertilization itself can be a disturbance leading to degradation of the forest. And there is an argument there for that. And if we can indeed consider that a disturbance leading to degradation, I'm sorry to say that 100% of the forest is degraded now. So, in terms of CO2, all the forests in the world have been touched by humans, so even the most remote environments. So I'm not sure if it's a matter of semantics or if it's something serious we should consider. I mean, all forests are degraded somehow. We are interfering in their cycling and the way they are structured, the composition of species, for example.
And not just CO2, but nitrogen deposition.
Exactly.
Soup.
Yeah. But what I've shown here is part of the picture, showing all those 4 disturbances. But if we consider other disturbances, not less obvious disturbances, let's say, it's a different picture. Not sure I answered your question.
You would hesitate to call intact forest landscapes intact forest then?
Yeah, pretty sure.
Okay. Even though
But could it still be useful?
I'm sorry?
Could the intact forest landscape still be a useful notion in order to, I mean, to classify and categorize at the present stage?
Well, define useful. I mean, we could
It
go.
makes
We
meaningful
could go
meaning.
at,
It's a way of making meaningful distinctions in forest quality.
or maybe is it meaningful to politicians to identify the forest that is most crucial to protect?
I see.
perhaps, you know?
Well, we could have a grading of
a grading.
degraded forests, less degraded, more degraded.
So, I think Rachel, and then, you want to jump into this discussion?
Thank you to all the panelists. I really enjoyed this. I have a question for Minguo. I found that your presentation very moving as well, and really, really inspiring. But I was surprised to see that you've partnered with LMVH, given the fashion industry is one of the most polluting industries in the world, has been linked to deforestation. And so I'm just curious as to why are you producing a product with LMVH out of the reservation?
You mean the pollution in my land?
Well, just generally around the world.
Yeah,
fashion is the
surrounded,
most polluting
lower
industry.
altitude, below the 1,000 altitude is all rubber. At our place is 1,600, they're mainly tea trees. At that time, only shift cultivation and burning, constant burning, but not polluted. No pollution yet, but only drowned with a strong wind at winter. So now with the forest stand up, so the most of water come back, so we can do this the biodiversity products thing.
That's not exactly my question. My question is, why did you choose to partner with a huge fashion brand?
Oh, fashion brand. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, fashion brand.
Yeah.
Actually, we choose each other. Next little video can show why they come to us, because Gaolan at that time wants to looking for exceptional orchids. They know that is the hot spot of orchid area. So scientists of Gaolan come to us and we discuss, and they found out we are just at the beginning. So they can find somebody else, but they found out we're doing very meaningful work. So they decided to come with us. And from that moment, Mr. Laurent Belot and said, I will support this. So he signed a 10 years sustainability agreement with us. So it's a great help at the most difficult time. So I'm very grateful for a gentleman who brought me here also. And that is how I understand the luxury. So since then, Laurent also changed somehow. He always think about this, and wherever he goes, he wanted to do this type of sustainability. Is responsibility to sustainability. So this is how we change each other. Yeah, it's not because I go with fashion. It's really, we become fashion now. It's like that.
So, Chuck and then Anastasia.
So this question is for Minguo.
Yeah.
So fascinating, great thing you've done here. Love it. Okay. I am interested. I saw a picture, and I saw a picture which looked to me like you were using people from tribal homeland and weren't like city Han Chinese
to do your project, and I don't know if that's true.
What city Han Chinese?
Yeah, well, it looked like the people were in tribal dress that were working. See your picture?
Yes, they are Aka people
Yeah, okay.
in the
that's what I-
village.
That's what I
But now
thought.
they are very rich. They don't want to work as work anymore.
Okay, that's fine. I was kind of curious because, you know, we all know the CCP moves people around when they want to. And, you know, they send a bunch of people to that. And you seem to have gotten, so are you saying that you don't really have the tribal people working on your land? So where does your workforce come from to
You know, Yunnan is a large area. Actually, Yunnan development is not even. So, if Xishuangbanna nowadays, because tourism and the tea culture and local villages are most of them are settled. In a way, they don't need to go out and work and to do some uneasy work. But most of our work come from Honghe district. From Honghe is another place which less developed. So they come work. We have 20 workers in our reserve.
So how did you find them, I guess? That's the thing. Did they find you?
Normally they come for tea picking because our area tea is very heavy. So they come for tea picking. They found out our place very fixed, settled. They don't need to run around each year. So they come and we select each other. So then they stay.
Awesome.
Okay, why don't we have one more question? You guys might want to continue the discussion, Anastasia, and then let's end with this second video.
I just wanted to comment briefly on what Lars said about this notion of intact forest, and David also said that all forests are to a certain degree degraded. But there is a close parallel to human health, and we are all to a certain degree degraded, right? But it doesn't mean that we should abandon the notion of health, because it is directly related to functionality. So I think with respect to the forest, it is about whether the forest is still functional in terms of climate, and carbon is one thing, but cloud cover regulation and regulation of moisture convergence and the water cycle regime is another thing. So I think that this broad category of everything being degraded to a certain degree should be at least complemented with evaluating functionality that remains, because it is on this functionality that we depend, not on the degree. So degradation is what takes from us, but we depend on how much of functionality the forest still retain. And in this sense, I wanted to ask David, how you evaluate this messaging that everything is lost, like your science paper comes with a big lost word.
I didn't write that up.
Yeah,
in the cover.
I know.
Amazon
this is, but how do you evaluate? Is it positive, like it causes like constructive concern, or it says that we are doomed and the Amazon is not needed and probably, it's lost anyway? So how do you see it? Shouldn't we still remain a little bit more positive?
Okay, I have to catch a train in a few minutes, and I don't want, so I won't be able to stay for afterwards conversation, but I don't want to leave you with the impression. I didn't say any moment that we should abandon this forest, and I didn't say that.
But when you constantly
I mean,
when
we
all
say,
forests are degraded,
but
this is this idea.
you want to say something?
Yeah, when you talk about everything being degraded, it's just not how you win. I mean, and I appreciate that the focus and the definition that scientists go through to understand the functioning and the degradation of function. But when people hear it and they're like, oh well, the Amazon's shut down. Now I don't have to worry about that. It just doesn't work. I mean, and I speak from experience. I mean, I want to save the Amazon, and I know you do too, because you love it far more than I do, you know? But at the same time, you have to show people how to look to the light. And that's challenging, it's super challenging. I mean, I'm
And
not
maybe,
saying-
maybe
Yeah,
impact
I
of change.
recognize what you're saying, but I'm afraid I have a different perspective here. When we have CO2 fertilization, for example, we can lose function in the forest. We are losing function along throughout decades there. And I'm not saying we should abandon this forest, but this highlights to us that it's not only about Brazil and the other Amazonian countries that should take care about it. It's the other countries as well that are emitting this CO2 to the atmosphere as well. So that's the point here. There is a global responsibility over this forest, and not only about Brazil, Guyana, Peru, Colombia, okay? That's the point here, I think.
So
And
you-
I recognize that there must be a difference between scientific precision, that we say everything is graded to some level, and how you take this message to policymakers. I mean, that's not the way you're gonna communicate it to them. Okay, I recognize this.
But
Well,
but degraded
I'm
is,
cross-analogize.
you could say degraded is a loaded term, right? I mean, it's a pejorative term.
Yeah.
And CO2, I mean, certainly some things are, I mean, if you have fire and drought, those have clear negative impacts on the structure of the forest, especially over time. But but CO2 has, I mean, it's taking out some functions, but there's other functions
Yeah,
that are
sure.
coming in, and you might call it an impact or a change, but it's, I don't know. I mean, I'm not necessarily
It's
advocating.
controversial. It's
Yeah.
controversial.
And over the
I
history
recognize.
of the Amazon, it has experienced high levels of CO2
Mhm.
in the distant past.
Sure. Not caused by us.
Not caused by us. But the the evolution of land plants has gone through many a range of CO2 levels.
So is there quick
Yeah.
intervention?
Bettina was
Oh,
asking
Bettina,
for-
Sorry. No, go ahead.
This is a question for David and whoever feels compelled to answer. I learned from bioarchaeologists that the Amazon rainforest is one of the parts in the world where people start to cultivate wild plants, and that biodiversity is in fact bigger where people have settled than in pristine parts of the world. It's Manuel Arroyo talks about it, Helena Lima. And yes, I wanted to know your opinion about that, and if it's true, in your opinion, that some 10, even maybe 3 to 10% of this vast forest could be a cultivated one, and if linked to that, agroforestry or intelligent forms of agroforestry could help preserve the forest and at the same time help people to survive it.
There will be a session, the next one.
again.
We'll be discussing about agroforestry, etc.
Yeah.
I am, trepidant here because I have an issue that's very, very important for this discussion here, which is the fact that the biotic regulation of the environment, the biota is doing biogeochemical thermostat regulation of Earth for a long, long time. So, and CO2 is the lever in this regulation. It's like a feedback loop, right? You have higher CO2 fertilization of plants, plants fix more CO2, lower the CO2 in the atmosphere. And this is precisely how a thermostat regulates temperature in a room. So it's a fantastic way of the Earth system, how it keeps the temperature within a level that is favorable for life. So when we say CO2 is a pollutant, it is in a way, but it's also a fertilizer. And fertilizing, it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad and the system is degrading because it's fertilized. The system is handling with this kind of balance and oscillation since the beginning, 400 million years. So I think this notion that you have a atmospheric composition that is leading the biomes to behave in a way or another, it would enrich your narrative in Science and Nature if you're going to be publishing those pieces, that you take this in. that the system is capable of dealing with changing CO2 concentration in the atmosphere, not necessarily as a damage, but as a part of the regulation capacity this system has. And it's there genetically coded in the system. So, because otherwise people think, oh, CO2 is bad, like microbes are bad for your health. Right? We have a microbiome inside us. But microbe produces disease and you get sick and you die. But CO2 is it's basic or sugar. Sugar is very good for our health. We need sugar. No being lives without sugar. But if you start eating too much sugar, you get sick. And if you start putting too much CO2, and I hope this experiment will show this, or is showing already, because you have already started it, that if you have too much CO2 or if it's happening too fast, then the system can use the genetic capacity to regulate. This was my comment.
So I'm sorry about time, but I need to say something. We in science,
for that and inviting me next time.
in science, we are too worried about numbers and measurements, how much this and that. But today in this group, we had something new that we were looking for. That is the word beauty. And you brought us this concept in your experiment. And it's just 20 years. So this is, I would call it hope. So we are bringing to us what we are looking for. So we are trying to encompass complexity, talk about complexity, and missing the point. So I hope that beauty and hope will be together in love, in offering our colleagues, the rest of the world, a perspective future that will be honored, and our kids will remember us, that they were the ones that had the courage on that time to bring beauty and hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
I still remember Joseph's eyes while discovering this wounded landscape by fire. He said, "Let us restore orchids home and bring rainforests back." He claimed, "Tianzi is the beginning." One day, Gaolan found us. They were looking for exceptional orchids, and Yunnan Forest is one of the orchid motherland in the world. Meeting with Gaolan felt very natural. We have the same goal: regenerate this forest devastated by intensive monoculture and hectic burns. What we do is called rainforestation, meaning that we gather a maximum of local different species, creating a living landscape. We reintroduce the native plant species. We collect indigenous seeds, we germinate them in our nursery, and plant them back to their refuge. This is a very powerful moment. Every time I look at an orchid's birth, I recall Joseph's eyes, like if every birth was a new light. A secret link between us for eternity.